So today we will share a very interesting held by Miss Laura Matas, who is a teacher of the house, yes. She is, for those who are in first and second years and don't know anything about Laura, she is in charge of linguistics too in fourth year, yes. And well, the title is Non-Sexist Language. Why is it possible? Now, before we start, and I didn't do this yesterday because I was so nervous, you know, but not nervous, but it was the first day and, well, many things to check, yes. I want to read her personal curriculum, yes. Well, it is in Spanish, yes. Laura es egresada del ISP Joaquín B. González, de Capital. Fue becaria de Fulbright en Estados Unidos y docente universitaria como ayudante en la Universidad Estatal Dakota del Sur, en Estados Unidos. Ha ejercido la docencia en instituciones de gestión privada y pública en la provincia de Neuquén, Tierra del Fuego, Cava y Córdoba. Actualmente es maestranda en lingüística formal por la Universidad de Comahue y se desempeña como profesora de lingüística en Lingüística 2 en el profesorado de inglés del ISFD en SAC La Falda y como profesora de inglés de nivel secundario en el Valle de Punilla. So, well, let's start. I don't know where the teacher is. Laura? Well, thank you very much.
Thank you. Well, thank you for that. First, I'd like to thank those who organized this. This is a very interesting, and we need things like events like this one. So thank you very much for all the effort and all the work you've put into it. I didn't know you were going to read this, so I'm, well. Okay. Well, as Patricia said, this talk is called Non-Sexist Language or Inclusive. Can I take this? Oh, wait. Non-sexist language or inclusive language, which is the same. Never mind the title, but the talk is non-sexist language. Why is it possible? And the reason why I chose this title is because after some years of teaching grammar, linguistics, and working in secondary school, I've come across different arguments against the use of gendered words or non-gendered words, depending on what we will see today. And many times, most of the times, the arguments against the use of that language, which is not a language, but wait a minute, the arguments that people say to be against inclusive language are not very solid, and are opinions that people think they are using linguistic tools, but they are actually not. So I teach this as part of my classes in linguistics to here, not this year. So if my students are somewhere here, I'm sorry, not this year, but you will hear it today. But I typically include this topic in my classes because on the one hand, it helps us understand the nature of language and the mechanisms of syntax, which is, I will explain in a minute, natural. And then on the other hand, it helps understand that the school is full of different identities, and our students, I work in secondary school, so I'm not familiar with primary kids, you know, in primary school. But for adolescents, sexual identity is very important. So we have to be at least aware of that difficulty. So I noticed lots of prejudice, a lot of prejudice, value judgments that do not help build a strong community, right? And many teachers discriminate against, not on purpose sometimes, but discriminate against many students because of the language they use or the way they, the way they speak. So I wanted to share with you some of my reflections on this, and in doing so, I hope we can understand a little bit more about how language works, because this goes not only for non-sexist language or for inclusive language, but it also helps you see other aspects of the language, you know, because there is discrimination against gender, there's discrimination against race, discrimination against many things. So a language, you know, sometimes is a vehicle for that, but it's not the language's fault. We'll see why. So I hope you can see this. Can you, or yeah? Well, so let's get to it. Yeah. I'm not sure you can read, right? It's okay. So let me see. I will try to read. This is a quote by Dubois. Dubois was a Black activist. He was the first man to document the African American oppression in the US, right? In the end of the 19th century, beginning of the 20th century. If you want to read his books, I recommend them. It says, do not at the outset of your career make the all too common error of mistaking names for things. Names are only conventional signs for identifying things. If a thing is despised, either because of ignorance or because it is despicable, you will not alter the matters by changing its name. If men despise Negroes, they will not despise them less if Negroes are called colored or African American. Right? This is 1928, right? So I was interested in this quote because it tells us two things, basically. On the one hand, it tells us that language helps us identify things. Language actually, depending on the approach you follow, but basically it helps us classify or understand the world. When we name things, we classify, we categorize them, right? We will see that the grammatical category gender has its specifics, but roughly, language helps us identify things, right? And the linguistic system itself also helps us, classifies things, right? You know, yesterday the talk was about systems. Well, language is a system, and as a system, the elements in the system relate to one another. Well, so on the one hand, this idea of language as an identification tool. And on the other hand, this other aspect of language that has to do with the division between what we think, the meaning, the concepts, or what we can call the conceptual structure, say in our brains, right? On the one hand, and its material realization, that is what we say, right? or the form those concepts have, right? So let's discuss the first part too. So gender as a grammatical category for identification or classification, right? Let's discuss this a little bit first. How's gender encoded in English? Well, in English we have gendered words. The grammatical category gender is expressed in the English language. It is expressed in the Spanish language as well. And there are languages that possess more than two genders. You know, in Spanish, there are two genders, in English, two genders. In the Bantu languages, for example, the languages people speak in East South Africa, the Bantu family of languages, they can have up to 6 genders, right? Grammatical genders, that doesn't mean there are 6 types of people with different sexes, right? No, we're talking about grammatical gender, right? So, in English, there are 2. And, well, they are expressed, gender is expressed in pronouns. You know the pronoun he, masculine gender, the pronoun she, feminine gender. They, what's the gender for they? Neutral, no gender, right. What about it? Same thing, no gender, right? No gender, fine. Now, the gender is understood on those pronouns, but there is no element there that tells us that he is masculine. We just know that, right? It comes with the whole word, but the EDH does not express masculine, the E does not express masculine. Now, the other element or the other class of words where we can find gender is animate nouns. And in animate nouns, we will find gender. We will find gender on words that are not inflected. Are you familiar with the word inflection? What is in an inflection? No, fine, thank you. So, an inflection is a syntactic operation, right? There are basically 2 morphological operations, inflection, derivation. So this is inflection means you have an element, say in the word, that marks a grammatical category. This is basically, right? So when you see the word salesman or salesperson, which would be the equivalent for non-gender job, there is no element there that tells us that one word is in the masculine, the other one is in the feminine. We just know that salesman, because the word man is, the male human being, so we know it's masculine. So, for some time, people started trying to change those words that focus on the male, element of the human beings and try to be more or tended towards speaking with non-gendered words, right? So instead of saying salesman, we say salesperson. Instead of saying mankind, we say humankind, so on and so forth. And then no problems with this, but then there are other animate nouns where we also express gender, and those are inflected. And the inflection, you can see the inflection on the morpheme S, for example. No? You say, instead of saying waiter, you can say waitress. Instead of saying actor, you can say actress, right? So you can see how we have 2 words. Actor, for example, refers to either masculine or common, that is, or neutral, that is, could be either man or woman, or you can also have the word actress, right? Then we also have inflections on other words that are imported, see, coined. No, when they come from another language. Borrowed word. Thank you very much. So there's fiancé, comedienne, hero, heroine, and so on and so forth. Well, there aren't many of these. And then there is another suffix, tricks. I don't know if you've heard of it. Tricks, yes. It's not very productive. The suffix tricks is not very productive. Actually, there are very few words, and not many people use it. And some people say it has negative connotations, right? But the suffix s is more often used. There are more words with that suffix. So my point here is that in English, some words do have gender, and there has been an attempt to express either the feminine member of the human beings or of the human species in these words like waiter, waitress, right? There was a need for that, and also today the attempt goes more towards the direction of non-gendered words, neutral words in general, like instead of towards, now you prefer to say, or it's say more politically correct to say flight attendant, which is non-gendered, right? So basically this is what how we express gender in English. Notice that in English there is no agreement for gender. That is a syntactic operation we have in Spanish, but not in English, right? So we don't have that. And another thing is that the grammatical category gender is in linguistics, they call it a feature. It's a feature of a language, right? And features have values. So the feature grammatical gender has a value, feminine or masculine, right? Or you can think of this way. The grammatical gender, the grammatical category gender has two values, plus feminine minus feminine, right? Or plus masculine minus masculine. For some reasons I am not going to discuss today, in English and in Spanish, we talk about the value plus feminine minus feminine, because the assumption is that the grammatical gender masculine is not really something in the linguistic system. It doesn't exist. Actually, what we have, right? But again, the grammatical category. What we have is either because notice this, if you want to express the common, or if you want to express the masculine, you say actor. If you want to express the common, both gender, you say actors, for example. You can say actors, both. But so the marked option is the feminine. So you do have to add something for the feminine. So actually, the assumption is that what exists is the feminine, right? Something like that. But this is linguistics, right? This is nothing else. So, so I am saying this because you will see in a minute how I wrote the value for the grammatical gender plus feminine minus feminine, right? So far, so good? Yes? Any questions? All right. Well. So remember we said, well, language has these two aspects. For identifying things, so we do mention, we name things according to their genders. We like doing that, we tend to do that, and we have the tools in the language for doing that. On the other hand, we have this idea of this division between the conceptual apparatus, our ideas, our meaning, right? The meaning we have, and how we realize that, how we materialize that, right? These are two aspects, two different things, which were first systematized by a linguist called Saussure, right? It's something. Have you heard of him, Ferdinand? Well, good. Yes, they're good. So he's considered the father of modern linguistics. Among many other things, he systematized this idea that, well, language is a system and it has these two parts, right? Our ideas and then how we express them, which is different. And you know, we can express them with words, but also with signs, right? Which is the same thing, right? Signs. Sign languages are natural. So he called that connection, he talked about the sign, right? Lexical items can be explained in terms of, or are signs made up of two elements, and those two elements he called the signified and the signifier. So the signified will be what we understand, the concepts, the ideas we have in our brains, and the signifier would be the vehicle that helps us, you know, externalize that. There's something very interesting about his theory, and that is he did not talk about what we pronounce as a signifier, but he called it an acoustic image. So it's not the phonetics, the signifier part of the sign is not the phonetics, it's the phonology, right? So it's an idea of the materialization, right? To make a simple example, the sign table, right? We say table. So the signifier is table, T-A-B, or the phonological, right, realization. And the signified, that is our concept, is the idea we have of what a table is, right? So that connection, right, which in English is the idea with table, but in Spanish is the idea with mesa, in French is that same idea or similar with tableau and whatnot. So what happens with the word actor and actress if we think of this in terms of the sign, right? Well, we have three lexical items. We have the lexical item, the first one is actor, and if you see the part above is the feature gender, the grammatical category gender, which is minus feminine. The value is minus feminine, you see, and the realization of that is this symbol is null, empty, vacío, right? Because we don't pronounce. You say actor, there's nothing in the word actor that means masculine, right? We do understand that. So the category is there, right? We just don't pronounce it, right? But we understand it, so it's there. And then there is another sign we have stored in our brains, which is actor, but with the empty symbol representing common gender, that is both or neutral, right? Which is different. It's not the same word, is it? One refers to male, the other one refers to common. And the asterisk there is something I have to clarify, because actually the value common doesn't exist in these linguistic terms, but I wanted to use it because it's clear, right? But actually here I should have written minus feminine. And see how confusing is it, right? Because there are two meanings for minus feminine and empty realization. So I used the term common, but it's not actually a very precise term. But see how we have these three signs: actor, minus feminine, without an externalization, actor with common gender, again, without externalization. And then there's a third one, actress, where the feature with the value plus feminine is expressed in the suffix s. Can you see that? Well, so you see that if you compare the first two lexical items, actor, you can see that for the same linguistic form, actor, we have two underlying linguistic forms or linguistic structures. You see? Please, if you don't follow anything, ask me. We can, you know. The idea is that we can talk and I'm not lecturing. Well, so keep this in mind. Now, this is how, you know, language in general works, its nature. And now there is one fact of language we know, and we can't change that, and it's that language varies. Language changes all the time. It is changing. You don't speak the same way your grandparents spoke, right? Or you don't speak the same way people in the 17th century here talked, right? Well, probably they didn't speak Spanish, or no, they did. But the language is different, right? It varies, it changes, it changes. Now, to understand how language changes, there are two aspects we can consider. One is time, and the other one is motivation. So if we think about language change or variation according to time, we can talk about synchronic variation or diachronic change, right? So synchronic variation will be variation that exists in different variations of the same language. So, for example, the present perfect. It's a pity. Molly is the girl that Chloe. It's a pity she's not here because I wanted to ask her about this. So the present perfect. Do you know that in American English and in British English there is a difference between the use of the present perfect, right? Now the language is the same, but there is a variation. Synchronic because it's at the same time. There are two varieties existing at the same time. In British English, they use the present perfect for many things, but one of the things they use it for is things that just happened just right now, right? This is one of the uses they have in British English, which they lost or they don't have in American English. American English, they say, I graduated yesterday, and British say, I've graduated, or I've just graduated. I've just graduated, but in American English, they say, I graduated, right? They don't use the present perfect. So that's an example of synchronic variation, right? At some point, American English changed, right? But now those two versions coexist. Another example is Ebonics. Does anyone here know what Ebonics is? You do. You have to. Exactly, right, very good. So it's you can say it's the way African American people express themselves, or it's a variation of the English used by African Americans, right? And it's because when we talk about a variation of a language, that's a language in itself, right? It's not that it's less important than English. It's just another variety. It's like the Cordobés, right? Cordobés is a variety of Spanish, right? It's not recognized, which it should be. And another thing, and what about this? Oh, wait, so why is Ebonics an example of synchronic variation? Because people use it at the same time. I mean, both standard English, or not standard, but American English, or, you know, Ebonics is another variety. Right. Right. Did you follow that? So like Australian, you said Jamaican, you know. Right. Right, right. And because, because language varies, so depending on the geography or the education or many factors, well, there is variation, right? And what we say is that all those variations are all variations, simple variations of one language. What is that language? Well, suppose English, but it's not that some people speak English and other people speak varieties of English. No, no. We all speak varieties of one language, right? All varieties are equal. Now, what about this example? Thank you for that. What about this example? La calor. Have you ever heard that? Do you say that? You do say that? Good. Where are you from? Right, in exactly Córdoba? Buenos Aires. Do you say la calor? Okay, so you find it funny, like it's not something we say. But many people do say that. From Italy? From Italian? I don't know that. Okay, probably. Right, so in Italy, in Italian, probably calor is feminine. Probably this is why. If it comes from Italy, probably this is why. All right. All right. It was just something people learned, and we will see how this happens. But some people do say la calor. And actually, there is no scientific argument against the use of la calor. I mean, why is this wrong? It's not wrong. Well, calor is masculine. It is said to be, right, exactly. And you use the right word, said, language, right? But calor is, what is it? In English, is it feminine or masculine? No, it's not gendered, right? So the thing in the world is not gendered, it's the language. Because the Spanish language needs to classify words so that then it can follow the gender paradigm for agreement, right? So it's a technical need, but it's not that calor is masculine or feminine. So if people say la calor or el calor, it's fine, as long as they say el calor es el calor with a masculine adjective, right? So if you use the agreement correctly, then that's fine, right? Está pesado el calor o está pesada la calor, ¿no? Agreement, as long as you, and they do, right? They use it right, because it's perfect Spanish, right? It's just another variety. And this is another example of synchronic variety, right? Okay. And then diachronic change, and here I changed the word variety for change, because when we talk about diachronic change, we talk about change that happens how? What do you think? Through time, right. It changes over time, right? Like, for example, thou and you. Have you read Shakespeare? The literature teacher. Great. No, they didn't. Ah, they did. Good. Okay, please. Good. Great. So you know what I'm talking about. Thank you. So thou was used to the 1500s, but now we use you. We say you. You are, thou art. Well, so that changed over time, right? And another change I wanted to point out, which is not exactly the same because this is spelling, but the change from honor spelled with an O and honor spelled with an OU, right? You know, well, this is still synchronic change, or this still happens in British and in American, but also this was a change that happened on purpose in the 1800s, like in 1806, Noam Webster published a dictionary, a compendious dictionary of English. Let me tell you the exact. And he, because at that time, the 18th century, the Americans were trying to establish their homeland and their identity. They had their revolution in 1776, so their Americanism, needed to be strong. So what this guy did, he was a lexicographer, and so he wrote a dictionary with how American people should write and speak also, because he changed some words. And so he said, well, why complicating things? Why saying honor with a U? That U means nothing, so let's just get rid of it. And he changed the spelling of many words. And he published his dictionary, and that took on. People loved it. Some people loved it. Others hated it. Others thought they should conserve the language, and the British were, the ones that knew, and we have to. That was a fight. Later on, Americans, or those that wanted their, Americanism to be stronger, won. And now we write honor without a U for American English. For example, New York. The new? Well, that's phonetics. Probably. I have no idea. But how do you spell it? Right. Well, that I would say it's a phonological difference, and it has to do with many other phonological differences Americans have with British. Now, I don't think that was on purpose. My point here is that this change happened diachronically, because first they wrote it like with a U and then without it, and they changed it. Now, if they did that, or whether it was diachronic or not, I don't really know. But that would be phonological, and there are many phonological differences, no, in American and in British English, many.
That's why I was going to ask you if Webster was American.
Yeah.
Okay. The fact that they also economize at the level of pronunciation.
I understand now. Right. Yes. Right, I understand. Yeah. Like instead of new is shorter. Probably that's the drive. Yes. And then we have variation according to time and variation according to motivation. I will just speed up. So changes can be externally motivated, politically motivated, social, like I just said before, or internally produced, like there is a need of processing information in a different way. So, for example, the case of present perfect, and that variation is probably is a case of how people started, processing information, and nothing more than that. So what about non-sexist language or inclusive language? And there's something I didn't say, which is actually we call this non-sexist language, but it's not a language, right? It's not a variation of English. Actually, there is no native speaker of inclusive language, right? Those people who use it, they just try to use it, and they make efforts to do it. And there is not a change of the whole paradigm either. So we can't talk about the language. This is not a language. But this is a phenomenon. This is something that happens, right?
Sorry. Now You don't see actors anymore, for example, or firemen, or policemen. I mean, in new versions of those, right? I mean, this is sometimes how we can tell, yes, whether a book is old or new. This is the language we use.
Yeah, it's interesting that when words are completely changed, like flight attendant, or there isn't much of a fuss about it. Like people tend to accept it. It's not a problem. But when we have changes in the inflectional paradigm, like in Spanish, todes, which we'll see now, that's a problem. That's a problem. Oh.
They have the same problem with actor and actress.
Do they?
Yes.
I don't know. You think so?
Watch TV now, see actor. I mean, Mary Streep is an actor. I mean, nowadays you see Oscars, they talk about actors. Or if you see, there's a, I don't remember the channel, E Entertainment, they use the red carpet, they're
Actor.
But nowadays, in those kind of programs, I don't know.
Well, but that shows there's still a fight. Say, okay, well. So because it has to do with power, right? Well, now, what about? Let's try to focus on these two elements. We said synchronic, diachronic, and externally motivation and internal motivation. And let's talk about these three words, which belong to what we can call non-sexist language. The word guys. You know the word guys? What can you say about that? No, in English. When they use it in English, it refers to what? Men, women, both. Both, right. And this changed because it used to be for men, right? Right, but it changed. And now no one, apparently, this is as far as I know, apparently no one uses this anymore as just only men. They understand, could be any, they understand this as common gender or neutral, right? People understand. So this like incorporated into the language as neutral, right? Today, it's changed. So is it diachronic or synchronic? Diachronic, I would say. Now, externally motivated or internally motivated? Like, was there a political or social purpose for this? External? Well, the etymology is not right. I understand, but let's talk about the use today and how it used to be when it was for male, for masculines, right? So if you think of that, I think it was kind of natural, but like the society imposed that on the change, probably. What about yes? Neutral meaning? Mm-hmm. Right. Yes, it's informal. And I can refer to all of you guys, and there are men and women here. Yes, that's the point. Ah, okay. Could be that. Yes, could be that too. And then they as the pronoun plural, third person, and this has another connotation. Now it is used in the singular too, right? You knew that, like to refer to the singular. Of course, you still say they are, but the idea is that to avoid say he or she, they use they now, right? And this is not many people are very comfortable with this. I didn't know this actor and on TV, but this I know that not many people are comfortable with this. But there is this change going, right? And of course, todes, right? Todes is not, of course, natural, right? But many people are trying to implement it so that, you know, show that you talk to people and you don't want to mention their gender, or there are both genders present, see? So todes is probably an example of, is it synchronic variation? Why not? Very good. Ah, right, but some people say todes and some other people don't. Right. Right. Well, that's interesting. I hadn't thought of that. But they are saying, well, this is actually part of the process. What we're seeing is a process. So probably if this takes on, and if it is included in the language in the future and our kids use it, then we will see the synchronic change. If, right? Still, that's up for grabs. We don't know, right? Yeah, you were going to say something. Okay. Any comments here? Sure.
Would you please stand up? Stand up. I'm sorry. Please, I want to.
Dude. Right, I see. And is it dudes? Well, yes, to keep, well, so, well, I'll try to speed up. So, we said language varies in different ways. We're going to skip this because this is going to be too long. And something that I would like to point out is that when, latest theories of the language are saying that, and this is my background, and this is why I think inclusive language is the way it is. And they say that actually language is a universal capacity all human beings have. And wherever you are born with that capacity, and there are universal elements in that capacity, say. And then, according to the language you learn, you express those universals, which we call universals, you express them in different ways, phonologically and syntactically, in different ways. And this helps us understand that language variation is not random, cannot be random, and you will never find corruption in the language. Because everything people say, if they say it, like naturally, is part of this universal system. There is nothing you can say that's not part of the system. If it's not part of the system, you will never say it. Like, for example, you will never say in Spanish, you will never say la mesa rojo. Who speaks like that? Right? No one. Because that is not correct for the rules of this universal grammar and how we express that in Spanish, right? So if we understand this, we can understand why, if we change the grammatical gender, if it actually takes on in the future, it will follow the rules of the grammar. It will not be exceptions, right? Or it's not that we are changing our pure grammar, right? That doesn't exist.